Good morning, everybody, and we are back from Thanksgiving. I think we are probably all one pant size bigger. I know I am. How are you, ma'am?
Well, and speaking of pant sizes, I'm actually in the living room dining room because my cat was asleep on my chair and I'm super soft-hearted, so I couldn't pick her up and move her. So I moved and I'm sitting next to the pies. So Brenda's job is to yell at me if you see me like reaching out for a slice of pie. Because
that is awesome. Oh my
I'm going above and beyond. Some people just overeat on Thanksgiving. I'm still going.
Oh my word. Well,
Thanksgiving is Saturday, so it's kind of new.
Well, we are here. We are back and rested. I'm actually kind of still on quasi shutdown, just because I take a couple of weeks at the end of every year. Take 2 weeks around Christmas and 2 weeks around Thanksgiving. This is when I do like all my budgeting and my strategic planning for the year and all that good stuff. So
look at you, organized.
I don't know about that. I have brain children, and that's how I get disorganized here real quick. So, see, I didn't even pull my microphone over. I'm not used to talking anymore right now. But that's okay. That's all right. That's what happens when you have a vacation. You just get out of your group. You know what? Do you find it really hard to disconnect when you take a vacation?
Well, see, my problem is that I don't really get the opportunity to completely unplug very often because the bulk of what I do is writing and the bulk of my contracts are for X number of articles per month. Like that doesn't go away. And as someone who's self-employed, I either work and get paid or don't work and not get paid.
Right.
So I'm never completely unplugged. And like when I go on vacation, I will typically get up a couple of hours before the kids and work for a couple of hours until they get up, and then we go off and do stuff. So yeah, sometimes I dream about just being like, all right, I'm on vacation.
That's funny. Yeah, it takes me, I mean, I literally had to force myself to watch like movies or just do something other than something in the house, just by gosh, focusing on your recovery and disconnecting is not always an easy thing because we just got momentum, but that's not what we're chatting about today. I just had a curiosity.
When we talk about important holidays and food.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about something today that a lot of people experience when they come back from a holiday. They experience it when they get T-boned. They anticipate this thing happening, and it's always a fun conversation. And we're going to share with you what our best practices are as individuals, like what we do and how we handle these things when all hell breaks loose, because everybody knows what that feels like. And not just in 2020, it is part of this job.
It is absolutely part of this job.
You can't plan for it. You can't anticipate it. It just shows up and says, hi, my name is blah, chaos, right?
Exactly. I mean, you can pretty much put together a list of things that might happen, but you don't know when they're going to happen.
That's right.
Or if, and employees are always coming up with new and exciting ways to send things to hell in a handbasket.
That's a good way of putting it. They do. They are pretty creative. So wonderful. So Suzanne and I came up with 3 things that we each do individually and that we focus in on when you get that phone call and all hell breaks loose. So do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
Well, it's interesting. Our things are very different, which is funny because
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, I think we're kind of similar in how we approach things, but we approached this in a completely opposite thing. So I think maybe we should alternate 1, 2. So I'll give my first one,
Okay.
which is my first thing when something big happens is I want to assemble the necessary team. And the reason why I say that, I mean, some small instances of things going to hell doesn't require a team, but a lot of times they do. And it's good to get those different voices in there so that you don't overreact. And a lot of times when HR finds out about it, it's because first a manager has found out about it and they've started to assemble their team, which is, calling up the HR person and saying help. And, depending on what it is, it's going to be a different team. But, it could be your employment lawyer. It could be security. It could be getting an EAP rep on the line. There's a million different people depending on the situation, but a lot of times you need that team.
Agreed. And the first thing that happens when all hell breaks loose in my world is the very first thing that I do is I tend to slow down the environment, and I slow down people because everybody's reactive, right? And, getting the team is the right response. Absolutely. But people initially are very reactive. And so the first thing that I'll do is I will slow everybody down, including myself, and make sure that I ask a lot of questions and I get all the initial facts before I figure out how do we move forward. Now, if there's a fire in a building, pretty easy way to deal with it, right? But if you're dealing with, an employee making a report of a complaint against somebody, or something just happened, like you got somebody who cold cocked somebody, or you got an active shooter scenario, you still need to slow some things down. Yes, you do have to respond quickly in the manner, but the last thing that you should be doing is reacting to the situation. Our gut instinct is to knee-jerk response, and as soon as you hear like somebody's like Joe just told his boss to go F off, and like in front of 45 people, what's your first reaction? Well, you want to fire Joe. But you know what? My response was, well, how is that possible when we only have like 18 people working on the floor at one time?
Right.
So let's slow down and figure this out, right? So that's the first thing that I do is I always ask questions and I get the facts.
I think this is a really good example of something to do. And it reminded me of an experience. When was it? Gosh, 2 years ago, November 20th, 2020. Time in 2018. Where a guy posted a video of him on social media at Chipotle, where the manager was saying, you have to pay before we'll make your food.
Right.
And he was saying how this was racist, blah, blah, blah. Chipotle jumped in, fired the manager immediately. And then they did the investigation, and they found out that this guy had been regularly stealing from it. And his modus operandi was to order, because if you know Chipotle, you go down the line, they make your burrito, and then at the end you pay. And so it would be sitting there waiting for him to pay, and he would reach over the counter, grab it, and run. So the manager was absolutely acting correctly to say, no, I'm not making this for you. But because Chipotle didn't investigate first, they just said, oh my gosh, based on this video clip that this guy who we don't know posted, you're fired. And then they had to retract it and apologize and blah, blah, blah. And they could have saved themselves a lot of headache if they'd followed Brenda's first step of
breathe.
Yeah.
Your turn.
Oh, all right.
No choking.
I wasn't even eating pie. All right. My number 2 thing is to try to map out the consequences. Depending on what action you take, I love like decision trees. If this, then that, if that's, then that, what will happen? And if there's, like Brenda was saying, an active shooter situation, this isn't the time where I'm going to sit down with a decision tree. And this is something you can do to prepare for those types of situations in advance, is to say, if we have this situation, let's go through our options. But this works really, really well for a lot of situations. Like you were saying, okay, Joe tells his manager to F off, we're going to fire him right now. What's going to happen if we do that? And then what's going to happen if we don't do that? And the thing is that depending on the situation, there may be situations where, yes, totally going to fire Joe. And there may be situations where you go through your decision tree and you go, no, that's not the right thing to do. But it's a clear, thought out, not emotion based. And that's really what I find is important, is to step back and not let the emotions, like, well, what will happen here if we do this, then what happens? And of course you're guessing a little bit, but we're pretty good judges of character on what is likely to happen. And as said, when Brenda was saying, when you take the time to investigate, you may find out that Joe said F off to his boss just after the boss dropped something heavy on Joe's foot, that it's like, yeah, that's.
Or the boss touched his butt. I mean, those things happen.
Yes, those things happen for sure. And that's why we investigate. And that's why I also say, let's, if we have time, we sit down and think about what the consequences will be. And then this also allows you for documentation should you later get sued. Like, this is what we thought through. And the courts generally don't second guess HR decisions as long as they were rational.
Yeah. That's how a court rules, is that if they make their determination on if it was if something that a reasonable person would have done.
Right. You don't have to be 100% correct to win the court case. You just need to be reasonable and sitting down and thinking through the situation. And this also allows you the time to compare with other similar situations that have happened in your business.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So the next thing that I do, wait, was it my turn or your turn? It was my turn, wasn't it? It was my turn. Okay. I got so involved with what you were talking about. So when all hell breaks loose, obviously that completely changes your entire schedule for either the next 5 minutes or the next 5 days, somewhere in between, right?
Or for the next 5 months.
That's right. But there's something important that I do. I'm very respectful of other people's time. And in the day and age of technology like we have right now, if I know that I've got a meeting coming up and I've got to deal with this now because that's the hot topic of my moment, I cancel my meetings and I send the person an email and just say, hey, listen, I have to cancel and reschedule. I apologize. I had an employee issue that came up. And you know what never happens? I never get an angry phone call. It's like, dude, I waited for you for freaking 20 minutes. Where the hell were you? That never happens. And everybody goes, ooh, okay. No, yeah, got it. No problem. Don't want to know, right? Everybody does that. And,
take care of it. Thank you.
Yeah. And everybody is appreciative of the fact that in the midst of all that chaos that you're dealing with, your mindset is to make sure that your relationship, you're doing something in good graces with somebody else, and it bodes volumes for you. Now, in a situation like a friend of mine, real good friend of mine, he was the get a load of this. I don't know if I ever told you this or not, but he was the global HR guru rep leader for Delta Airlines on 9/11.
Oh.
Now, can you imagine having to try and figure out how to cancel your appointments? I would have just been like to my assistant, or anybody, and just say, take care of it. Just wipe my schedule clean, right? I would have had to delegate that to somebody else in the midst of hell and chaos. But I think something catastrophic like that it goes without saying, don't worry about your schedule. Take care of what you need to take care of. Right.
Right. And in that situation, the whole world knew what was going on. So it's fine. But
Absolutely.
mostly the whole world doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
But just as you said, this is important for so many reasons. You know, for one, Brenda and I are dealing with personally with external clients. And so for our own businesses, it's important to let people know why you're canceling. But even if you're an in-house HR person, it's really important when we say we value employees, it also means we value their time.
Yep.
And it is important to cancel those things. And I love that that's something that you thought of, because that didn't come to my mind at all. But it's a really important thing. Just like you said, shoot someone an email, a text, or whatever. If you have an admin, have them do it. And it's something rapid that lets people know that you still care about them, you're still there to help them. But right now, something has come up. And he said, no one ever is like, no. And if they are, then they got issues. As long as you're not crying wolf and using this as an excuse for any meeting you want to get out of. But if it's if it's just genuine thing and you've built that relationship of trust with your employees or your clients, as the case may be, then people are like, okay, get back to me.
A big thing is that, you know, the internal customer service perspective still needs to be there, but it also pans up to my number one live and die rule. And that is, in the absence of information, people make stuff up. So if you've got an internal meeting and all hell is breaking loose and you have a manager that's counting on you being there and you don't show up because you didn't take that moment to let them know, it's like, hey, an emergency came up. We got to reschedule. I'll reach back out to you when I'm done, or a little bit later or whatever. They're going to build a very bad image of you, that you are unreliable.
Absolutely. And that's really important. And I was just thinking a couple of weeks ago, I was interviewing someone, and she texted me and said, can we reschedule? My dog, he ate something. I don't remember what it was.
Right.
You know, not a business reason, but my response was, I hope everything's okay with your dog. Absolutely, we'll reschedule. No big deal. Because even though it wasn't a human crisis, I was like, okay, her dog ate something he wasn't supposed to, and she needed to take him to the vet. You know, and that's an okay, that's not an HR crisis, but you know, I was perfectly happy to say, okay, even though this was on my calendar for today, we'll just do something else, and it's fine. Most of the time, people are fine with rescheduling.
Yeah,
just letting them know really makes all the difference in the world. All the difference.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, your turn, ma'am.
All right, my last one is to give a united message. And this is in a situation where the all hell breaking loose requires a message of some sort. Right. A lot of all hell breaking loose is pretty private within the HR realm, and that you don't need to go out and give things. But you know, there was a time I was driving into work and I was listening to NPR, which was my habit, you know, their morning edition. And I worked for a very large pharma company, Wyeth Pharmaceuticals, and I'm listening to NPR, and they're like, pharma giant Pfizer has bought out Wyeth. And I'm like, oh.
Good to know.
Good to know. Good to know. I park my car. I go in. I walk into my boss's office, and I'm like, Mary Beth, what in the heck? And she's like, I don't know. You know, this was a deal that was done just at the very, very top levels. Yeah. Very, very top levels. And nobody in HR knew until it was announced on NPR. That's how we all found out. But then we needed to make a united message right away for the employees. And of course, the Pfizer team had planned some stuff out, of course, because they knew. We just didn't know. But that type of thing, you really need that united message. You can't have boss in one area saying this and another area saying that, and someone jumping in and saying, well, if Pfizer's taking over, then these people are going to get laid off, and you're going to get laid off, and we're going to be retained, and they like to do this and they like to do that, and it's all chaos. But if you can get a united message at front, like you said, in the absence of information, people make stuff up. Yeah. So if there is no overarching message, then people start to panic. And they start to make things up. And I have found out that people always make up worse things than the reality. When your teenager is out late, you never think, oh, I bet she stopped to help an old lady cross the street. You think, oh no, I'm sure she's been hit by a bus and died, and it's the same thing within business. If you don't hear, okay, this is what the plans are, then people start to think, I'm going to lose my job. How am I going to pay my mortgage? And they start to panic. And so that united message really can be important. And it can be important on a small thing. If everybody hears, go back to Joe telling his boss to F off, you may need to give a united message to everybody because they all heard it.
Yeah.
And to make sure that it's clear from all sides what you're doing.
Yeah. All right. So my last thing is get clarification and get very clear on what the outcome leaders want to see. Now, some things are going to be kind of common sense, right? So we talked about, take my friend's example, Delta Airlines, right? Chaos is going to go on for hours, but at some point in time, you want to get very clear with leadership to understand what their end outcome vision looks like, right? I mean, there's a time and a place to handle everything, and then there's a time and a place to say, okay, things are starting to, we have a grip on what's going on. What are your expectations about moving forward, right? You got to have that. And then sometimes you'll have a situation where the boss comes up and says, I want to fire this employee. Like, got it. Now you know what the expectation is. But even still, because you understand the expectation, doesn't always necessarily mean that you can meet it. Right. And it may not necessarily be the right expectation to execute at that moment, or or it may have to get pushed back to a little bit further down the road. But at least you know what the end result is that they are expecting, right? Sometimes, when I said it's not the right expectation, they could say, I want to fire, such and such. Again, I revert back to, okay, so why? I slow the environment down and I wonder what they're thinking. Once I understand what they're thinking, then I can move forward. But if you don't understand what their expectations are and you miss the mark, that's not going to do anything for you in your reputation and your future, to be honest with you. I mean, yes, you can make mistakes, but you know what? There's a stigma that comes in HR, and that is that you are expected to perform above reproach, and you should take yourself to that level, but you're not going to always hit it every single day.
And this is really, really true. People expect us to be perfect, and they really hold it against us when we're not. But I love how this last point of yours fits in with my second point about the whole decision trees. So the boss says, I want to fire Joe. That's what I want. And you can sit down, slow it down, and say, okay, if we fire Joe, then this, this, and this. If we don't fire Joe, we can do this, this, or this. And let them see what those consequences are. Because there's going to be a time when you say, look, if we fire Joe, we are at high risk for being sued for sex discrimination because last week Sally also told the boss to F off and we didn't fire her. So is this something that you're willing to take on? I have to say, no, or whatever. And you can work through those things. And ultimately the decision lies with the the boss, the CEO can always override HR. But
And they do.
But if you've got it clear, like, these are the consequences. And there are times when they may say, I don't care if this puts us at risk for a lawsuit. I want them out of here. And, I say, okay, but I want to make sure you understand. And then here are the potential consequences if we don't do that. Or here are some other ideas. And that's slowing it down, finding out expectations, and giving options. All of those things work so well together to get a situation under control, and again, calm everybody down.
Yeah, you have to. You have to just get everybody on the same page. So, but that clarification is important. And, I teach a class. I've taught this several times now this year alone. And it's really kind of talking about, how do you lead your team? How do you lead a remote workforce right now? Which it's on everybody's mind, but I take a very different approach on it. And, I talk about building trust. I talk about, how you communicate. I take more functional items into play. And one of the things that I mention when it comes to setting expectations is, and this comes with this, right? And getting clarification on expectations, is that make sure that you understand that expectations aren't automatically shared. So standards around expectations aren't automatically shared. They need to be communicated. And, when you hear something, never make the assumption that you guys are on the same page. Always get clarification. And so, like, for instance, when I had a boss and we were dealing with a very sensitive situation that unfortunately I can't discuss. But one of the things I said is like, okay, so I know that you really want to separate from this person. But I told him, I said, listen, I have a question for you. If my information uncovers that this may not necessarily be what we think it is, are you open to having a different conversation around the outcome of this person's future? And they went, yeah, fabulous. Now the expectation is set that I've actually got the CEO to be a little bit more open-minded without really even knowing anything. But now the expectation is that before we just instantly fire this person, we're going to have a conversation about it.
And I think that setting expectations, I love your point, and I think we can't repeat it enough, that people don't always express their assumptions, and they assume that you are just on their same page, and you're assuming that they're on the same page, and sometimes you are, and that's great. But if you're not, it can really send things in a bad situation.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be bad. It can be minor things. But the thing is that those continuous minor things build up, and then it becomes a major thing. We coordinate this show literally remotely. We got one person in the US, we got another one in Switzerland. And we've had moments where it's like, wait a minute, I thought the expectation was this. And you're like, oh, no, I thought the expectation was that. And we just talk it through. But the cool thing is that when we plan for our shows and whatnot, if we don't understand what the other person is thinking, or if we see that there's a potential crack in our understanding, and we actually confirm everything before we come on, and it's just like, okay, so just really quick recap. You're going to do this. I'm going to do this. Are we good? Yeah. Any questions? No. Great. Then we jump into it. Right. And it's so easy. And we don't have any fights. We don't have any problems. We love the hell out of each other. We work well together as a result of it. But that's because we just get everything out before we move forward.
And it's okay that we don't agree on everything. Actually, that makes it feel a little bit better.
No, it's not. No, I'm kidding.
No, you're wrong. Fine. We don't agree. Wrong. I mean, let's be honest. Brenda has a dog and I have cats. It's a little bit tough to.
Just saying.
Brenda has trained her dog to be obedient, and I'm in the other room because my cat is sitting in my chair.
Life happens. Life happens.
I'm such a pushover. I am really, hard-nosed that we're going to do the right thing when it comes to people, but my cat's sitting on my chair. I'm like, oh, okay, honey.
Whole nother deal. That's
I
fine.
won't wake you up from your nap.
Oh my gosh. So those are our 6 things that we do when all hell breaks loose. And hopefully you guys will get a chance to take that away, because we totally derailed there at the very last second. But
Sorry.
okay, so yeah, so we gotta stay on track here today, because if we don't, we enjoy doing this so much that we do get off pace really easily. So anyway, so at the so towards the back end of every show, as you guys have been watching, if you haven't watched before, we challenge each other with a question, and it can be tactical HR, it can be strategic HR, it could just be general HR knowledge. Usually we tend to like make each other nervous. Oh, we say, "Ooh, I got a good question for you." You're like, "Oh crap." Right? But we put each other on the spot. We enjoy it. It keeps us nice and fresh, and it keeps us on our own 2 feet, which is awesome. All right. So last time you asked me the question, so I'm gonna kick it off this time. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Can an employer reduce the salary of an exempt employee?
If you're asking a yes/no question, the answer is
It's a yes/no question with a why.
Yes, you can reduce the salary, but let's talk about the why and the when and the where for us.
And the how, right?
And the hows. So you can't reduce an exempt person's salary because they came in late, or because they left early, or whatever. That you can't do. There's only very limited times in which you can dock an exempt employee's pay. If they're taking FMLA is unpaid. I mean, you can always pay people for FMLA, but under federal law, you don't have to pay. So you can dock their pay for that. If they have used up all of their sick time under your plan and they take a full day off, that's possible. If they have used up all of their vacation time and they take a full day off, it's possible. But otherwise, it's really, really sticky. But if we're talking about you make $60,000 today and I want to pay you $55,000, can you do that? The answer is yes, but you have to give advance notice. So I can't say, oh, today is November 30th and you get paid on the 15th and 30th. Here's your paycheck, Brenda. And by the way, it's smaller because we cut your salary.
Right.
You would have had to tell me before this pay period started. And in some states, that has to be in writing. And then the person has the opportunity to either accept the lower salary or to quit. Or, I mean, they can always negotiate as well. But you can't require someone to work for less money than you agreed on. You can say, this job now pays $55,000, take it or leave it. That's up to you. Assuming that you're not doing this because of race or gender or, any protected reason. Right. Just some companies did this have done this year, where they said, we're giving everybody a 20% pay cut across the board. As long as people are making more than minimum wage still. And for exempt employees, as long as they're making more than the exempt minimum, you can do that, but you have to give advance notice. And the people have to, and in some states, it has to be in writing.
Yep.
So, yes, you can. Now, did you ask, should you?
Well, it depends on the situation.
It depends on the situation.
I didn't ask should you, but yeah, can you? But yeah, but should is a good thing too.
Yeah, and I see a lot of those companies that did the pay cut across the board rather than laying off 20% of their workforce.
Right.
Some people may say, no, it's better to lay off people or whatever, but others may say it's better to take the pay cut. It really depends on your situation, and I can't make a judgment from here without seeing the situation. But it's definitely something you should think long and hard about before you attempt to lower any employee's pay, but not just an exempt employee. But there are special rules around exempt employees. And you can't temporarily lower pay and then raise it back up again. Then the powers that be tend to think that what you're trying to do is dock pay in a sneaky way.
And we'll get clear on that. You can't do that like every other week. If you have to reduce pay because of an economic downturn, or it's to keep your doors open and it's going to be a temporary but yet longer term, could possibly be a permanent solution, then that's one thing. But you can't just because you want to invest in your new Ferrari and you need capital to do it, you just can't take away from your employees like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It needs to be a real change and not, if it's just for a short period of time, the Department of Labor is like, you're trying to dock and exempt employees' pay, and you can't do that. So
Cool.
there you go. Sweet. All right. Here's my question for you. And I admit I stole this from a human resources group. It says, I have a work from home employee who asked us to buy a desk for his home office. The employee has back problems and thinks he would benefit from a standing desk. Everyone who works in the office has them, but we don't provide them for work from home employees. Are we required to provide that accommodation for his home?
Are you required? No, but you know what? If it's an easy thing to request, I would just do. Easy thing to fill. I would do it. There's two different kinds of desks that you can get. There's the $2,500 mechanical pneumatic raising desk, and then there is the $125 tabletop version that you can get on Amazon. You got a choice. So so if it's somebody that has a back issue, and if you're looking at, and there's shades of gray in this, you have to evaluate, is this, a potential ADA, because not every back issue is an ADA situation. Could it be it? Maybe, maybe not. But if you start to regard somebody as having an ADA issue, you're launching yourself into an ADA situation. So, if it's just somebody says, hey, listen, this would just make my life really easier. And if $125, $89 is nothing to keep anybody's engagement level up. Zero.
I love your answer.
Thank you.
Because you weren't like, okay, we need to send him to his doctor and fill out the paperwork. It's like, this is a situation where the cheapest solution is to buy the $125 desk from Amazon. It'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah. Super easy. It doesn't take very much. Years ago, I had a manager that we had a guy at work who went in for surgery on his shoulder, right arm. They botched his surgery. So his shoulder, botched it bad. He lost like 85% mobility in his shoulder, and which extended down into his arm. So he's dealing with that stuff, right? And so he had to adapt and use his left. And so it's like pear and spare, right? So he started adapting and learning how to use his left hand. And he asked his boss, he's like, hey, listen, can I get a left-handed mouse? And you know what the boss did? No. 3 days later, I get a resignation letter on my desk, and I go and I talk to the person. I said, what's going on? And it was written in a way and delivered in a way that you knew something was up, right? So I said, so what's going on? And he's like, I just don't want to work. So I talked to him for a while. He's like, I just don't want to work here anymore. I talked to him for a little bit. And he told me, he says, I'm leaving because I asked for a left-handed mouse. I don't know how long I'm going to be dealing with this. I think this is a lifetime thing for the rest of my life. And I'm just trying to figure out how to make my life easier. That's a reasonable request, right? So I wound up talking to the manager, and I'm like, are you freaking stupid? You used to be my boss. And you used to tell me, listen to your employees. So that's why I could tell him that. And we were laughing about it. I'm like, it's a $25 mouse. Get it. Just do it. It's not a pride thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up, Nicole. It's a pride thing, right? And that's really what it was for him. He's like, well, I'm not going to make any special accommodations for anybody just because he wants one. I said, did you ask him what the problem was? No. I said, he lost mobility from his surgery. I said, you denying that not only makes him feel like crap in a crappy time, but he now potentially is in an ADA situation, which launches us in an ADA situation. So to get us out of the ADA situation, buy him the freaking mouse.
Did he buy him the mouse?
Would you run and go get it for me? No, go do it yourself. And at that point, we're laughing, right? Just but because we know each other. But it's like, no, go get it yourself. It's like, well, I'll have my wife get it. I'm like, I don't care how you get it, just get it. So,
and that's what the situation is here. Sometimes it's just cheaper and easier to give the accommodation. And why wouldn't you want your employees to be happy if you can do it for $125?
It's an easy expense. It's an easy expense.
It's going to be far, far cheaper than the initial consultation with the employment lawyer when you get sued.
And you know what? When they leave, let them keep it. Just don't even worry about it. Don't do this inventory of what you've given everybody else. Everything. When I left ADP, I got a big printer from it, and I still have it. Yeah, I got because I had an at-home station, and I had a monitor, and I had a printer, and the printer, tell you right now, is probably worth all of $35. When they bought it, it was bought at $500 and some odd dollars.
Right.
They're like, that is not worth their expense for something that I've had for 4 years out of the 5 years, and is now technology that's not even up to date.
No, it would not be worth the money to pick. I mean, just the cost of sending someone out there to pick it up or to ship it.
Right. Yeah.
And the same thing with a $125 desk that you can buy at Amazon. There's a nicer one at IKEA that I have been eyeballing. It's like $300. So,
well, the point is that I mean, it's like, just make it easy. But you know what? There's stuff that depreciates too. So, you know, sometimes an employee can keep a computer so long as it gets wiped, because the depreciation is done. You know, it doesn't have any value to the company anymore. So, anyway. So that's we could really go sideways on that one, but we're not.
Okay, that's a different topic. But
so anyway,
I loved your answer because it just really puts it into perspective. You know, you can dither about what do we have to do, or you can say, okay, this is the cheapest. It's super cheap, and it solves the problem, makes the employee happy, engaged, tells the employee that you care about them.
Bigger fish to fry than that. Yeah.
Bigger fish.
Sweet. All right. So we are coming down to the back end of all of this. And we have 2 groups that we would love to invite you to. Ma'am, would you like to go ahead and share your group with everybody first?
Yes, ma'am. So I run a group called Evil HR Lady on Facebook. And it is a public group, so you don't want to talk about things that are going to get you fired. But it's an HR community and a bunch of people also that are not in HR, but that like HR stuff. And we talk about all things HR, and we share HR memes, and we really support each other throughout all of these crises that have been going on. And for a lot of people that are in HR department of one, when all hell breaks loose, this is a place you can come and say, look, this is the hell I'm in. Can you help? And we're part of that team that you can assist.
Yeah. And you know what? They really do have like some of the best memes out there. There's some really good ones that come through. I really like reading those. And then my group is the Next Gen Women in HR Facebook group. We're not yet a year old. We will be in January. So we're coming up on it, which is pretty awesome. It's a great group of people. We funnel out all sorts of, as much information as that we can through there. And it's just a really nice, awesome place to come and just share information with like-minded individuals and connect. Because we actually do have people that have connected within the group. And we make it personable. We make it, it's intimate, but it's growing at the same time. So we'd love to have you over. And I'm trying to get my button to work here. There we go. It almost wasn't going to happen. So I'm going to flash up here for you guys real quick how you can reach out to us one more time and our social sites. Guess what I did? And then we'll wrap this up here because I got a meeting in like 4 minutes. No, but I haven't posted it just up here yet, but I went back to tweeting again.
Oh, did you?
I did.
So what's your Twitter handle?
Brenda, the HR lady. I just haven't put it up here yet. So anyway,
All right.
so we are looking forward to seeing you guys again next week with yet another episode. And we hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And we'll talk to you in a week.
We'll talk to you in a week. Bye.
Bye.